Kingdom Come Deliverance is an open-world action RPG developed by Warhorse Studios, released in 2018. It was a game that passed me by when it came out, and I've heard it's too realistic and not very fun to play, but the sequel is getting nothing but praise, so I thought I'd give the first one a shot. You play as Henry in 15th century Bohemia. He's a blacksmith's son who wants to leave his peaceful little hometown and go out and see the world against his father's approval. Whilst helping his dad make a sword for Lord Razig, his town gets attacked by an army of humans. Henry manages to escape, but not before witnessing his parents being killed. After warning people in the next town where he spends the night, Henry returns to bury his parents, but gets attacked and knocked out by some bandits who steal his sword and are about to kill him, when he gets rescued and taken to a safe place. He then wakes 2 weeks later with the goal of finding his sword and getting revenge for his parents. It's a good setup during the intro. It shows you the game's dedication to realism. There are no fancy elements like dragons, just typical medieval life. You get to know Henry. He's very likeable and relatable. He sleeps in, likes to drink, and is a bit of a simpleton. He's not very good at anything during the intro. You get to try out different mechanics like lockpicking and sword fighting, which are hard to do. You also get to try out speech checks to try and persuade someone to give you money he owes your father, but I failed these. I think you're supposed to. It shows how far Henry has to come. You get a couple of errands from your dad which get you to explore your hometown and meet the people. This really makes the invasion by the humans hit harder as they start killing people you just met. This really makes you feel for Henry and you want him to succeed on his quest. I rather enjoyed the main quest. It starts as a very grounded revenge story where your goal is to kill one man and eventually turns into a war epic with you in big battles trying to stop an invasion. Henry's story is a simple blacksmith's son who can barely hold a sword to a full-blown knight fighting an army is great to play through. The story and the gameplay mesh well together to tell and show Henry getting more experienced and competent. Henry's not the only one to get the focus. Lords, knights, bandits and villagers all have their own motivations, which are shown making lots of the characters seem three-dimensional. It doesn't feel like anyone's just doing anything just because it's a game. There are lots of standout characters you'll meet along the way, like young Lord Hans Capon, who starts out treating Henry like a peasant and not really getting on with him. This eventually turns into the two becoming best friends when Henry saves Hans' life during a hunting trip. They have a fun mission where they get drunk at the local bathhouse, leading to shenanigans like a stripped dice game, and beating up the bath's maid husband who crashes the party. I really like their relationship. It feels like bros just hanging out and insulting each other from time to time. Another character I like was Father Godwin. He is the Parnish priest in Usit. He's not your typical priest for starters. He lives with his concubine and trains with a sword. He also likes to get drunk. There's this one quest where you need to get info from him, but he won't tell you, so you get absolutely hammered with him. You play through bits and pieces of the night. You get kicked out of the tavern, you ring the clock tower, you're in a field full of sheep and you have to run from the guards. So when you wake up the next day, Godwin is way too hungover to give a sermon, so he forces you to do it. It's quite funny. It's actually quite a humorous game, which surprised me. There's lots of funny dialogue sprinkled throughout the game, which is nice, as this can be a very serious game. There's a nice variety of quests, getting you to do lots of different things like performing an exorcism, stopping a plague, tracking down a lost horse, and even building your own town. One of my favourite characters are also in one of my favourite quests, which happens to be a DLC story. Joanka is a survivor from your hometown. She has set up a makeshift hospital of sorts next to a monastery to treat other survivors like Matthew, a man she's always had a crush on but is currently in a coma. She starts having weird dreams where she's visited by the Virgin Mary. This is where she enlists Henry's help. He will help figure out what her dreams mean and solving issues. This starts out simple, like finding a cave she described, stopping her husband's gambling addiction by making him think he's lost all his money, and helping a prostitute find a new career. You can solve these issues using different options, like you can be mean or nice to the prostitute, or you can just fail. You can make the gambler lose all his money during a game of dice, get him drunk and take the money, or just pickpocket him. If you're feeling greedy, you don't even have to give him the money back. These decisions you make will be important later. With each successful issue solved, Matthew will wake up more and more. Joanka decides to tell the entire town about her visions so she can help more people, because she truly believes the Virgin Mary is talking to her. She even makes Henry take a pilgrimage on foot to make you ask forgiveness for all the bad things you've done during the game, like thieving, drinking and killing, which I thought was neat. But when you get back, you find Joanka has been taken away by an inquisitor who accuses her of heresy. There will be a trial for her which you get to defend her. This is where your past actions come back into play. If you manage to solve the issues earlier, you can get people like the prostitute and gambler come speak at the trial. You can even tell the inquisitor about other quests you've done in the game to get him more on your side. Depending on how well you do, Joanka can be executed or can live. It's a very in-depth quest with lots of important decision making, and you really have to go the extra mile if you want the best outcome, making it one of my favourite quests. I also like how this game doesn't shy away from religious themes. Basically all the characters are Christian, and Henry will make the sign of a cross on himself when he says God's or Jesus' name. It really helps with the immersion and the world building. I suppose I better talk about how the game actually plays then. The best way for me to describe it is like Skyrim, but everything's a bit more complicated to do and there's no magic. There's no class system. Skills grow the more you use use them. You want to level up pickpocketing, you're going to have to go pickpocket people. Want to level up your sword skills, you're going to have to hit people with swords. So skills can take ages to level up if you're not using them. Every few levels of a skill you unlock a perk for it, which you can choose from. The weapons is a new combo, but for others these can sometimes be game changing. So take the speech skill for example. I unlocked a perk called Final Offer. This meant when haggling I could offer the lowest amount possible without pissing off the vendor, meaning I could always get the best prices for the stuff I sell or bought. Sometimes picking one perk locks you up with another, like for the drinking skill you can pick between a skill that makes wine get you drunker quicker but beer makes you get drunk slower, or the skill that's an opposite. I like how you can't get all the skills, making you actually have to think about what you're getting. I use some skills more than others though. Like I never really use alchemy unless it was store related, as I didn't like using the alchemy station. You have to actually follow recipes, so if it says you need 2 nettle, grind it up, put into a boiling water for 2 turns and wait to cool before adding 3 wormwood, you're actually going to have to do each step of that. It is very immersive to do, and the potions you can make are very powerful and a lot cheaper than buying them. It's just something I didn't enjoy and took too much time, but again if you keep doing it you can eventually get a perk that auto brews potions for you. Stealth is okay in this game but pretty basic. You crouch and try not to get seen. What you're wearing determines how loud you are, and wearing darker colours makes you harder to spot. The AI isn't the best, it feels like they turn around for no reason sometimes, or can just see through walls. Who knows, maybe I just was unlucky. There's no way of distracting people, but you can lure them away, but this feels like a bug. Sometimes you go near a person in a private area, they will look at you and follow you around for a bit. You can lead them somewhere more secluded, where you can quickly get behind them and knock them out. It doesn't feel like they should follow you as far as they do. Other skills that I first got turned off by were lockpicking and pickpocketing. They are like Skyrim's but more difficult, but I got the hang of them eventually. For lockpicking, you have to find the right spot in the lock with the left stick, which will turn yellow, and then turn the lock all the way around with the right analog stick, without the yellow spot moving too much, which is hard to do when the entire area is moving. The left stick has to move around with the right stick. Pickpocketing starts off the same as Skyrim's. Crouch behind someone, make sure no one's looking, and instead of pressing A and taking all you want, you have to hold A for as long as you think you can, without a person knowing you're there. If your target is moving, this can be difficult as you need to stay close and keep your cursor on them. If you held it for 12 seconds, then you get 12 seconds to pickpocket before the target notices. This will take you to a wheel a bit like a clock, and the hands are items. You start at the top and you have to move your cursor left or right to the item you want and select it, and if you want to steal it you're going to have to bring the cursor back to the top. If you don't bring it back to the top you will get caught. At lower levels of pickpocketing all the items will be shown as a question mark until you highlight over them, so if you're trying to steal something specific you might have to go over all the items to find the one you want, wasting time. This is why you need to get as much time as you can before the wheel starts. If you keep leveling up the skill however, you can get a perk which reveals the items as soon as you start the wheel bit. As I said, it took me a while to get used to it, but the cool thing about this game is if you can't do something like pickpocketing, there's normally other ways to get what you want. So at the start of the game I needed money and I couldn't really pickpocket well, so I figured instead of just doing that I could just knock out people and take this stuff instead. If they don't see you they don't know who it is who knocked them out, so you won't get into trouble. They normally have keys to houses and trunks, meaning I didn't have to deal with the lockpicking. I would rob them of all this stuff and everything I could carry in their house. This is how I made bank early on. If you try to sell stolen stuff in the area you stole them from, the merchants won't buy them and report you. So if you steal something you need to wait before it's safe to sell, noted by a red indicator on the items. Obviously you don't want to be caught carrying that stuff on you as it's heavy, and if a guard performs a random search on you they'll take all your stuff and fine you. So I would take it to the chest at your bed and let it cool off there. If you put it in other places people might find the stuff and take it for themselves and sell it when it was safe to do so. You won't get the price the things are worth though, so there's this necklace that's worth 1k but only ever managed to sell it for 300 coins. That's why it's more important for quantity over quality when stealing and selling. This is where the final offer perk I mentioned earlier comes in handy. You get a free horse a few missions into the main quest, which I use to the end of the game. It can store extra items so you can loot more stuff. But it was getting pretty annoying travelling to the one chest I had. Then I found out you can buy permanent beds and shared chests at inns. This is not explained to you well. When you go to the innkeeper you get an option to buy a room for one night or a few nights. A few nights means permanently. They should have made this much more clear. So this is how I go over the challenging first few hours of the game. It was satisfying figuring out how to do this, and it really helped with my enjoyment of the game, because I had a bed, I didn't need to worry about getting tired, I had loads of money to buy stuff and repair it. Hunger might be another thing that will put you off playing. Henry needs to eat a lot and food goes off pretty fast unless you cook it. But there's a really easy solution. Around towns and camps you can find campfires with a pot of food cooking above it. You can just walk up and eat it for free. It fills at 30% of your hunger meter. Once you eat from it, you can eat from it that one again for a little bit, but there's normally a few around the towns. No one complains you are stealing their food, and the pot's cooking day and night, so I never went hungry again. Every time I saw one I would eat from it. There is also a hygiene mechanics. If you want to pass speech checks, you're going to have to look your best. If you're in dirty or damaged clothes because you got in a fight or fell off your horse, the people you talk to are going to comment on it and they will be harder to charm. You can find pots of water around towns to clean yourself up a bit. This does an okay job, but the best place to go is the bathhouses, which will launder your clothes. You're also going to have to repair your clothes as they get damaged quite fast. You can try to repair them yourselves or take them to the correct vendor to repair them for a hefty price. Tailors will only fix clothes whilst blacksmiths and armourers will fix armour, another little hint of realism. Fast travel is also a bit more complicated than Skyrim. You can only travel to specific spots on the map, and there's not very many of them. You also don't teleport instantly to them. Your characters move across the world map, which looks like an actual drawing of a map, which I thought looked cool. There is a random chance of something stopping you whilst you're moving towards your destination. This could be a random person you can chat to, an obstacle, but most likely it's bandits trying to kill you. You have a chance to avoid these encounters depending on what percentage is shown, but you're probably going to fail these a lot until you get more perks, so it might be better not to fast travel early game. The main thing I would assume that will turn people off this game is the combat, and yeah, I was put off it myself. I'll start with the bow as it's simpler to explain. First, you're going to need some armour on your arms if you want to use the bow without hurting yourself until you're level 5 with the bow skill. Because Henry's never used a bow before, he doesn't know how to hold it properly, so it hurts his arm when he draws it. You don't get a crosshair when aiming, so it does require some skill to use. I had to practice at an archery range to figure out where my arrows were going. I figured out that you have to aim a bit lower and to the right if you want to hit your target. I used the top of Henry's knuckle as a reference point. Still though, I avoided using the bow unless I really had to. I preferred close range. Unarmed is what you expect. You can punch, jab, kick and block. I never had too much trouble with this, just kind of button mashed. Melee weapons however were much more challenging. You can use swords, axes and maces. They all play basically the same along with a shield. So when in combat, you can't just button mash away, you'll lose stamina too quickly. You auto-lock onto enemies. You have to pick from 6 directions you want to attack from. Bottom right or left, top right or left, or very top are all swings. And center, which is a jab. So if your opponent has his weapon in the top left, you want to swing from the bottom right, I think. You can also dodge if you move the left or right just before an enemy hits you. You can also block. You will lose a bit of stamina each time you get hit, so it's better to try and parry, which is done by pressing the block button just before an enemy hits you. It is also essential that you learn Master Strikes as soon as you can from Bernard, your trainer. It's like the parry but does damage. This will let you counter an enemy. This is necessary for fights where you're outnumbered. I could win one-on-one fights pretty consistently towards the end of the game, but I never really got it. I think I managed to win because my strength skill was so high and I could just power through them. Sometimes fights could be over in seconds, others would take minutes. I think I was just draining the enemy's stamina by blocking using Master Strikes and making them block, leaving them open for attacks when they ran out. Group fights I had to be a bit smarter about. I'd wait till nighttime where enemies are asleep and I've taken their armour off, so I would sneak in, take out as many as I could with stealth kills, lead into a fight with more manageable numbers. It also helped I found a sword called Stinger, which had a very high damage output when landing a jab, which are easier to land than swings in my opinion. So for more challenging fights I would high burn my shield and jab when I could. I know I'm making combat sound hard, but it wasn't that bad once you get the hang of it. Kind of immersive, as Henry would be shit at fighting, he hasn't done it before, and gets better with experience, just like me the player. Hey, maybe that's what they were going for. The game looks pretty good. Landscapes are beautiful, there's just not a lot of variety. It's green fields, trees or towns, but that's what I would expect from a medieval game. Villages and towns are very detailed. You can go inside almost all buildings and it feels like thought has been put into how they are laid out. They also look how I imagine a medieval town to look. Architecture and social customs are based on real history. There is even an in-game codex like Assassin's Creed for historical references. The music was good, I liked the main theme. I liked how the soundtrack seemed to adapt to whatever situation I was in. Voice acting was kind of hit or miss. Some characters like Henry were great, others sounded really questionable. This was only normally side characters though. Unfortunately, this is still quite a buggy game to this day. Nothing game breaking, just a bit of jank. My game crashed about a dozen times, some animations look stiff and the AI is very quirky. I had characters endlessly walking into walls, characters not moving to their starter position, forcing me to reload. Like, it didn't happen loads, but still enough to mention. So overall, it'd be hard for me not to recommend a game I played for over 80 hours. It has a bit of a learning curve, but nothing you can't get the hang of after a while. I think the main quest is great, might be a bit too long as towards the end I was kind of hoping it would end soon. Most quests are good, but some feel like filler. It also has some good DLC. Henry's a really relatable and likable character. If you want a more immersive experience than Skyrim, this will probably be the game for you. So let's rank it. I'm thinking number 3. I enjoyed Death Stranding and the fact it tried to do something different, but it did have its frustrating parts and confusing story. Kingdom Come had its frustrating moments at the start too, but it feels like that's part of the learning curve. I also like the simplest story. It's a basic zero to hero plot, but it was well done. I don't think I can put it above Astrobot, which was just fun from start to finish. I was constantly engaged with that game. It's also extremely polished compared to Kingdom Come. So yeah, number 3. I look forward to the sequel. Till next time.